we're gonna start though by going into executive session. We expect to be about an hour, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but we'll try to get through our agenda there and be back as quickly as we can. So first, Beth, could you please take the roll call this morning?
Yes. Trustee Cates,
Here.
Trustee McCarthy,
Here.
Trustee Flood,
Here.
Trustee Mishu, I thought I saw him. Trustee Riley,
Here?
Trustee Kane,
Here.
that's everyone.
Okay, thank you. So,
Trustee McMahon here also,
I'm sorry,
Trustee McMahon, sorry, Trustee McMahon.
present.
and I also see, although I'm not a member of the committee, I also see Trustee Moore is with us, and do we have other non-FFT trustees? Don't see anybody, so good. So now could I please have a motion for the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee of the Board of Trustees to go into executive session under the provisions of 1 MRSA Section 405(6)(c) to discuss the condition, acquisition, or disposition of real property or economic development if premature disclosure of the information would prejudice the competitive or bargaining position of the UMS. Is there such a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Chair Riley and seconded by Trustee Kane. Beth, could you take the roll call vote, please?
Trustee Cates,
Yes.
Trustee McCarthy,
Yes.
Trustee Mishu,
Yes.
Trustee Riley,
Yes.
Trustee Kane,
Yes.
Trustee McMahon.
Yes.
The motion carries. I'll move you into executive session.
Thank you. And again, we'll be back with everybody else in just about an hour or less, hopefully. Thanks.
Hi, Betsy.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
You have a good time in the woods?
It was fantastic, just amazing. I hadn't realized how fascinating Chenzeng is. He's amazing.
Yeah, he can keep it going too for
Yeah.
a long time.
I bet. Yeah. So I'm not sure why we're out here. I'm supposed to be in there, but who knows? We'll find out.
I'm asking if they can move me into executive session for Ray because
Good. Yeah.
Hi. Hi, I'm supposed to be in the executive session.
That was pure sick.
How you doing, Sam?
I am well. I just lost internet connection, so got kicked out of executive session and now need to somehow get back in.
So I don't know if we're in. I mean, I've been in meetings and
Yes,
Okay,
they're in
yeah.
executive session. Ooh, I'm just getting invited back in until I think they said around 10.
Okay, I'll go off until 10 then. Thanks.
Okay, I think we've got everybody back. And again, for those of you who have been waiting, thank you for your patience. We'll now get started with the public portion of our agenda. We've got a number of really interesting things to be digging into today, and in addition to our usual consideration of capital projects. So before we begin the formal agenda, I'd like Vice Chancellor Lowe, if he would, to speak briefly about some really excellent news we just got in terms of our Standard & Poor rating. Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Always exciting to talk about good news. As you noted, we were informed this week that S&P affirmed our AA negative rating. For those of you that have not memorized, all of the scales, that is, we have a great rating, high quality, low credit risk. They start up at AAA and then AA and A and then down to triple Bs and so on. So we're up in that top third of public higher ed institutions, and so happy to maintain that rating. We went through, it is an exhaustive process going through that rating agency process. We meet with the team from S&P. We exchange volumes and volumes of documents between Tracy's office and Darla's office. I'll note a couple of the specifics that they pointed out. Some of the positives. Really spent some time talking about the system's success in securing federal, state, and private research grants, and how that's added to our fiscal strength and our academic reputation. Lots of references to the University of Maine and that R1 classification. The repeated references to the support of the Alphon Foundation, the support from our partners in state government, and lots of compliments about our ability to manage our expenses, notwithstanding the challenges that we've had. They note specifically how we've reduced our reliance on the Budget Stabilization Fund. They noted in conversations we had with our team and the Chancellor how really appreciated the discipline around the Budget Stabilization Fund. And so, as the Chancellor and I both have said on a couple of occasions, 20, 30 years doing these meetings felt like it was really one of the better back and forths that we've had. It is one of the things that I noted was S&P has a really stable team. It's the team that we've been working with for quite some time. And so they've been here, when we've been at our deepest challenges and stuff. And so we're certainly not out of the woods, and we acknowledge that, and they acknowledge that in the report. But it was also nice that they acknowledged the significant progress that we've made, because they were here when we were struggling on a regular basis just to figure out how we were going to balance the budget. Never mind actually getting to that kind of that magical point. So notwithstanding all the positives, they do present some challenges in there. They note, as is often noted, the declining enrollment, the challenges of the demographics that we have in the Northeast. The biggest kind of challenge that they noted for us going ahead from a fiscal challenge is, again, as it often does, comes down to capital and capital needs. And this acknowledgement that we need to make significant investments in our infrastructure. And if we continue to be successful in securing outside resources and state government resources, then that's the path that potentially, could lead you to an upgrade or at least stability in our rating. If we're not able to get those resources externally, if we have to start, using the UMS credit card more to kind of pay for those kind of investments, then that's the scenario that typically could potentially lead to a downgrade. So, again, some caution in there, but overall, we have a really strong rating, and I know we were super excited to maintain that rating. So happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chair, if you have any.
Thank you. Trustee McMahon.
Good deal.
I don't have a question. I just want to make a comment that this is outstanding work. And I think the committee and the Board of Trustees should be giving a real sincere thank you to Ryan, to Tracy, to Darla and their teams. This is unbelievable in the adverse demographics that we're facing, that we're able to maintain such a good rating.
Here, here.
Thank you. Thank you, trustee. Other comments? Anybody else want to address this? Just what David said. Thank you, David. It's great news.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Okay, so we've reconvened. Just reminded everybody to please leave your mic muted when you are not speaking. And now we're going to move to our first agenda item. This is regarding the Maine Graduate and Professional Center, the Maine Center building renovations. And there will be a request for a motion to approve some funding going forward there. I understand that is Seth with us?
I am.
Oh, you're there. You are on the other screen. Welcome, Seth Goodall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. It's great to be here with you. I'm going to share my screen and walk you through a short presentation. But as the chair just mentioned, we'll be here today seeking approval to initiate really the first substantive rounds of renovations to 7 Custom House. And that will become much clearer, as I said, obviously in the plural, because this is a multi-step process. So just as a bit of a primer and a reminder, we're very fortunate to have the funding available to purchase 300 4th Street and 7 Custom House due to the generosity of the Harold Alfond Foundation. We last year were able to enter into leases onto 7 Custom House, and now we are striving to make 1 building. And I stress that word, so it'll be connected. It'll be really a hub of energy that will be a place for academic programming as well as innovation programming for professionals, as well as convening and knowledge sharing. You see on the right-hand side there are 4 main core objectives at the Maine Center. One is our core interdisciplinary graduate degrees and programming. We're very fortunate to have it being the home of the Maine School of Law, along with the MBA. Of course, the MBA is almost exclusively online, as well as our partnering of our great partners, the University of Southern Maine Muskie School of Public Service and the Maine College of Engineering and Computing, as we continue to build out that programming in an interdisciplinary fashion. We're striving to really develop in the very near future a very focused but really impactful professional development executive education program, really focused on Maine's workforce to strengthen our economy here in the state. It is going to be a hub of entrepreneurship and innovation, that work primarily taking place in 7 Custom House. And then, of course, as we continue to expand, really being a center of convening and knowledge sharing with world-class facilities. As just a bit of history, looking back on 300 4th Street, we have 63,000 square feet, 6 floors, total renovation cost of $13.8 million. We were fortunate to open the building in January of 2023. We had the ability to purchase that building in the fall of 2026 for $17 million. 7 Custom House, 5 floors. Interior renovations will be finalized this fall in terms of the projected costs after a large, robust stakeholder process. Of course, we will be back in front of you because that will exceed not only this committee, but also the Board of Trustees, because that will exceed $5 million. The 7 Custom House facility will be primarily focused on entrepreneurship, R&D, innovation, opportunities for expanded programming with engineering, as well as real convening and collaboration. We had the right to purchase that in the summer of 2026 for $20 million. And just to hone in on the estimated renovation costs, the renovation costs for 300 4th Street were approximately $205 per square foot. Obviously, inflation and costs have increased since then. You heard me mention it will exceed $5 million, but we're fortunate today to have $8.5 million approximately on cash on hand, that being $6 million from the capital investment funds. And then we were very fortunate, thanks to the leadership of the delegation, especially with the leadership of Senator Collins, to receive congressional directed spending of $2.4 million that will be going into the project as well. In terms of just a little bit more of the steps that we'll take. Step one is familiar to you. I spoke about that a little bit just a minute or two ago. Of course, in step one was 300 4th Street. And these are 4 steps to bring together both buildings into what I refer to as one building that will have interconnections and just people moving back and forth throughout the entire facility, that being 300 4th Street and 7 Custom House. Step two, we were fortunate to open up the 2nd floor of 7 Custom House this spring with approximately just under $300,000 that we proceeded under management authority for improvements to that floor, along with some other capital improvements to 7 Custom House, as well as some minor improvements to 300 4th Street. We are now entering step 3, where we'll be doing the design and all the feasibility studies, engineering, and we're asking today for FFT's approval under your authority for $650,000 for design and engineering. We're fortunate we have onboarded Maine-based Harriman, the design and architecture firm, and they have support from Goody Clancy, another architecture firm, along with other engineerings, and they really put forward a strong process, strong overall presentation, I should say, during the RFQ process that concluded in July. The $650,000 will really all be focused on interior spaces with very limited exterior work, because of course we do have some responsibilities not only to 300 4th Street, but potentially doing some studies on 7 Custom House as well. Then lastly, step 4, ultimately we'll purchase the buildings, both 300 4th Street and 7 Custom House, for $17 million and $20 million each respectively. And then the renovation costs in ultimate construction will be finalized later this fall, early 2025. And one thing I just really want to stress is that we are kicking off a robust fundraising campaign, not only with the Maine Center team, myself, but also with the support of the other foundations that will help us not only achieve the match that is required for the Harold Alfond grant, but also those dollars going directly into the building to complement the $8.5 million we have on cash that I just spoke about. I'm going to pause there, Mr. Chair, to see if I have any questions you may have that I could answer, and any other clarifications.
Thanks, Seth. Questions? Could you just take that down just for a second, Seth, so we can see the group? Thanks. Questions? Yes, Barbara, Trustee Alexander.
I don't have any questions on the building or the construction issues or the dollars you've talked about, but it would be interesting at some point to get a combined presentation of the academic and student affairs use of this building, as to what's going to happen inside of it, and how it relates to growing programs or making current programs more popular and with greater enrollment. And I don't think we've seen that connection yet, and it would be important to decide the dollars to spend on it with the plans to make use of it at some point. Thank you.
Thank you.
On that note, working with Chair Riley, we're in discussions of reappearing in September for a more substantive presentation to build off what I presented back in January, but Trustee Alexander specifically touching on the points that you just referenced.
Great minds think alike. Okay, other questions at this point? Seeing none, Seth, why don't you go ahead? Thank you.
Excellent. Mr. Chair, the last part of the presentation is just the proposed resolution asking that the Board of Trustees through the FFT committee authorize the University of Maine system acting through the Maine Center to expend $650,000 for the design, planning, and limited renovations and capital improvements to the Maine Center.
Thank you. And again, could you just highlight for us the source of those dollars?
Yes, those dollars will be coming from the capital improvement funds. $9 million was initially set aside for the Maine Center approximately 3 million has been either earmarked or spent out of that 9 million. So that's where those $650,000 will come from.
Thank you. So while I'll read the text of the proposed resolution, and we'll see if there's any other discussion. The proposed resolution is as follows: that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee and authorizes the University of Maine system, acting through the Maine Center, to expend $650,000 for design, planning, and limited renovations and capital improvements at the Maine Center in Portland, Maine. And Seth, again, if I could ask you to take down that slide there. Is there such a motion? Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Mishu and seconded by Trustee Kane. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Beth, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, trustee Cates,
Yes.
trustee McCarthy,
Yes.
trustee Flood,
Yes.
trustee Michaud,
Yes.
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee McMahon.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. And again, Seth, thanks very much. And we'll see you again in September. Appreciate it. Okay, we will move on to the next agenda item, which is a tab 2 in our materials, Sustainable Aquaculture Workforce and Innovation Center. President Farini Mundy.
Thank you. We're very pleased to come to you with a request for authorization to spend an additional $9.565 million for the construction and completion of SAWIC, the Sustainable Aquaculture Workforce and Innovation Center at the University of Maine. This will be a new structure to house aquaculture teaching and research. And there are details about this in your materials, of course. It's all related to our efforts to advance aquaculture research and development in the state of Maine, to serve the economy in the state of Maine, to bring together workforce preparation with cutting edge research. The funding sources are the funding is coming from multiple places: Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, as well as congressionally directed spending due to the great work of our delegation, and then other initiatives. So we can go into more detail, but we are very excited about getting SAWIC up and running.
Thank you. And we do have other materials in our packet here further describing the project. Are there questions for President Farini Mundy about this project or what we're going to be approving today? I'm not seeing any, so let me then read the text of the proposed resolution. That the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee approves the following resolution to be forwarded for Board of Trustees approval at the September 15-16, 2024 board meeting. That the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee and authorizes the University of Maine system, acting through the University of Maine, to increase the authorization to expend an additional $9,565,000 for a total expenditure of up to $11,065,000 for the construction and completion of an approximately 14,200 square foot facility to house Sustainable Aquaculture Workforce and Innovation Center, or SAWIC. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Mishu and seconded by Trustee Kane. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Beth, could you please call the roll?
Yes, trustee Cates,
Yes.
trustee McCarthy,
Yes.
trustee Flood,
Yes.
trustee Michaud,
Yes.
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee McMahon.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is also at the University of Maine, at tab 3 in our materials, the Boudreaux Hall renovation authorization increase. Again, President Farini Mundy.
Thank you very much. So Boudreaux Hall is a 92-year-old building on the campus. We had requested authorization to spend $700,000 on the renovations that are made possible by the generous gift from Karen Boudreaux. And we are finding that due to increased costs and some unforeseen needs, we would like to request your permission to request your authorization for $100,000 more, the total now coming to $800,000 to finish this renovation.
Thank you, President. Questions? Comments? Seeing none, let me read the text of the proposed resolution that the Board of Trustees, acting through the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee, authorizes the University of Maine system, acting through the University of Maine, to increase the authorization for renovations of Boudreau Hall, formerly North Stevens, by $100,000 for a total of $800,000. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
By trustee Mishu and seconded by
Second.
Chair Riley. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Beth, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, trustee Cates,
Yes.
trustee McCarthy,
Yes.
trustee Flood,
Yes.
trustee Micho,
Yes.
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee McMahon.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is a budget increase request for Mallet Hall renovation project at the University of Maine at Farmington. Those materials are tab 4 in our book. President McDonald, good morning.
Good morning and thank you. We're seeking authorization for an additional $500,000 to complete the renovation of Mallet Hall. Mallet is a iconic 100-year-old facility that houses students on campus. Its sister facility, Purington Hall, right next door, has been completed, and students will be coming into that facility or are starting to go into that facility right now for this semester. But Mallet Hall needs additional renovation for it to be completed. So I want to just turn this over to Lori Gardner, and she can go through some of the details on this proposal.
Thank you, President McDonald. So as referenced during the June FFT meeting, it was discovered that structural floor joists were in the same condition as Purington Hall. When it became apparent that we could only get one building done prior to opening this fall, we made the choice to focus on Purington. We've continued to do projects in Mallet that capture economy of scale. For example, we added an ADA ramp to the building at the same time the one that Purington was poured. When the project is finished, it will support student community and educational activities by addressing the accessibility of the bathrooms, upgrading plumbing fixtures, and creating ADA accessibility in the hall. As with Purington, we had completed an extensive pre-construction demo to understand what the needs would be for the project prior to going out to bid. Unfortunately, the structural issues that were discovered were hidden behind many layers of renovations in years past, and a full demo of the area would have been needed in order to notice the intensity of those structural issues. The structural issues require the contractor to remove the subfloors and joists, as well as add supporting beams to hold the load of the building from the basement all the way to the attic. When done, the building will have been brought up to the current code and will reduce work orders for pre-renovation plumbing issues that were occurring due to failing pipes. The project also relocates the laundry to the first floor, added an ADA ramp to the building, and thereby all the first floor areas are ADA compliant. Further energy savings are anticipated because of the installation of new energy efficient equipment, and it matches our ongoing ESCO project on campus. The increases to the budget does not impact the funding for any other projects slated to be done on campus. We purposely left $1 million unallocated until both Purington and Mallet projects were complete, just in case we ran into unforeseen conditions. Once both projects are completed, we'll reallocate unused funds to other projects on campus. And the substantial completion date of the project is anticipated to be April 26, 2025. We plan to use it for Summer Hall next summer, and students will occupy it for the fall of 25. Thanks for your time, and my Director of Facilities Management, Keenan Farwell, and I are available to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Lori. Questions from the committee? Let me ask this if I could. One of the last things you mentioned, Lori, was that yes, this is additional cost, but you've already kind of budgeted for it by putting this money aside. And I wonder, is this maybe a discussion for another time for this committee, but that seems to make so much sense. I can't remember the last time that we had a major renovation project that came in under budget. Perhaps it happens and we just don't hear about it, but what you've done seems to make a great deal of sense, and we perhaps can discuss another time systemizing that a bit more.
Thank you.
Thanks. But any other questions or comments about this proposal? Hearing none, let me read the text of the proposed budget. The proposed motion. That the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee approves the following resolution to be forwarded for Board of Trustee approval at the September 2024 board meeting. That the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee and authorizes the University of Maine system, acting through the University of Maine at Farmington, to increase the construction budget up to $500,000, making the total project budget $3.2 million to renovate the restrooms and replace the failing plumbing infrastructure at Mallett Hall. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
A move by trustee Mishu, seconded by trustee Kane. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Beth, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, trustee Cates,
Yes.
trustee McCarthy,
Yes.
trustee Flood,
Yes.
trustee Micho,
Yes.
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee McMahon.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on then to another construction issue, this time at the University of Southern Maine, a request for budget increase for the esports arena construction in the Lower Brooks Dining Hall at USM. Those materials at tab 5. President Edmondson, good morning.
Good morning, Trustee Cates. Thank you so much for having this item on the agenda today. You may recall last year, the USM Foundation worked with Town and Country to secure a gift for our esports arena. The gift was $750,000. At the time, we had good evidence to suggest that that would cover this total expense of renovating space in Lower Brooks Dining Hall for our esports arena. After the project went out to bid, it came in considerably higher, unfortunately, and so we are asking for an increase in the amount for this particular project and a loan from the system to help us cover those expenses while the USM Foundation continues to help us with the additional fundraising we need for this particular project. The Esports Club is one of the fastest growing clubs at the University of Southern Maine. We're really proud of the work the students are doing there, and we're hoping to find good ways to support them through this new space. So I'll turn it over to Justin Swift, our Vice President for Finance and Administration, to add further detail. Thank you.
Thank you, President Edmondson. So as the president mentioned, this project was approved in January at a budget of $750,000. The construction bidding went out. We had multiple bids that were essentially double what we were approved at. You know, a lot of it was related to some of the work that needed to take place in the existing facility with HVAC and other mechanical systems that we could not simply value engineer downwards. So, you know, this request is a project increase request of $875,000, bringing the total project to $1.625 million. The $875,000, if approved, would be an internal system loan that would be paid back over 3 years. And the plan is that philanthropy funds would make up the payments.
Thank you. Questions? Let me ask if I could, how large, I understand this is used or will be used by a club which exists, the esports club. How many members currently, what's the projection for usage of this facility?
Yes, we have it's approaching 200 students right now in this particular club. And so within a year, it grew from 1 student or 2 students to over 100 quite quickly. And now I'm told by Student Affairs that it's approaching 200.
And right now, I think the material said that essentially there's no central location for this club. They're playing out of their rooms, essentially.
That's correct. And these esports arenas are really critical because the esports arenas bring the students together. It also serves as a way to sort of level the playing field because then everyone has the same quality equipment. And the environment, I think, is really one that's conducive to having the students work together and build relationships. It's a wonderful affinity group.
Thank you. Trustee McCarthy.
Yeah, thank you, Roger.
Can I get a sense on level of difficulty for the fundraising? Like, is this a conservative amount or an aggressive amount that to be continued to raise for this in your opinion? Like, how do you think about that?
In talking with the foundation, they feel confident that we can fundraise for this. There are a number of groups that they're already talking with, great interest in it. But it's something that we're not able to do in just 1 year. They expect that it would take about 3 years for us to raise the funds completely.
Great, thank you.
Other questions about this project? I'm not seeing any, so I will then read the text of the proposed resolution. Excuse me 1 second. Thank you. That the Finance, Facilities and Technology Committee approves the following resolution to be forwarded for consideration at the September 15, 16 board meeting. That the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Finance, Facilities and Technology Committee and authorizes the University of Maine system, acting through the University of Southern Maine, to increase the budget from $750,000 to $1,625,000 to be funded through a UMS loan of up to $875,000 for the renovation of the lower area of the Brooks dining area for an esports arena located on the Gorham campus of the University of Southern Maine. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Mishu, seconded by Trustee Kane. Discussion or questions about the motion? And I just thought of one before we vote, if President, or you or Justin could answer this. So the fundraiser is going to take a while. The internal loan from the system, what's the terms of repayment? That is, do you have to, what's your repayment schedule and where's that money going to come from?
Yes, we've talked about a 3-year repayment schedule. The USM Foundation is fairly confident that they can raise the funds over those 3 years to repay back the loan.
Okay, so what happens if, for instance, in the first year that they haven't raised enough to make what would be the first year payment? Does that payment just not get made, or does it come from somewhere else in the budget, or what?
Yes, we will have to work with the foundation to make sure that we're on track for the fundraising aspect of that. The plan is in the event that they fall short, say in year 1, there might be a ramp up. We will have to cover those with our E&G funds, which we believe that we can at this point. And either the campus can get reimbursed later for those through the philanthropy funds.
Thank you. Chair Riley?
Thanks. Just a quick question. One has to be a member of this club to participate in esports?
No, I think any student could participate,
Okay.
and it'll be the spaces in Lower Brooks on the Gorham campus, which is a space that's used by a lot of students. And there's even talk, we have an esports minor, and so there will be a class taught in that same space using the computers. And so it will be widely used by more than just the students who are in the club.
Great. I think that helps a lot. And I wonder if we shouldn't spend some mental health dollars on this, because it clearly is building a community of students, which is a great goal.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you. Trustee Flood?
Thank you. Yeah, this is a little bit different, I think, as far as kind of a backup plan, I guess, from the USM Foundation. But I guess just based on their record in the few years that I've been involved working with the USM Foundation, I'm very, very confident. So I just wanted to say I'm very confident that they're going to try to find this outside philanthropy. I'm pretty sure they'll find it. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Trustee. Trustee McMahon.
Just a comment that at the ASA meeting on Monday, the student discussion topic was student engagement. The concern is that students are not being fully engaged with life on campus. And obviously, this is a way of getting 100 or 200 people out of their room into an arena. So I'm all in favor.
Thank you, Trustee. Is there a team? Is there a USM team, or will there be a competitive team?
they are competitive and they've won already some national competitions. And I honestly, I'm afraid to say too much about it because I'm just learning, but they are in competition with groups across the country, other universities. They've had great success. It's really wonderful to see, but again, I'm learning a lot about it as we go and work through this process. And it's been really terrific to see how well they've done in just a short amount of time.
Thank you. Okay, so the motion's been made and seconded. Seeing no other questions, Beth, could you call the roll, please?
Yes. Trustee Cates,
Yes.
trustee McCarthy,
Yes.
trustee Flood,
Yes.
trustee Micho,
Yes.
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee McMahon.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is from the University of Maine at Presque Isle, the Kelly Commons Boiler Replacement Project, tab 6 in our materials. President Rice.
I think I may be standing in for President.
Oh, I bet Betsy, please go ahead.
Each one of us, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Each one of us on our campuses has target challenges, which are overwhelming in terms of operational need. For us, one of the target challenges is boilers, and the location where we have the most concern is Kelly Commons. Those boilers have been in place since the early 60s, and we realize that if we lose them, which is they're way past their life expectancy right now. If we lose them, we not only lose heat in the building, but we lose our ability to feed and maintain our students. So before we lose them, we want to have a plan in place for replacement. We're looking at a cost of about 1.5 million with us financing through budgeted operating costs that we have put aside for capital investment, for using the proceeds from Skyway sale, and for an expected budget surplus, which for anyone who has any concerns, we're 84% ahead of where we were last year with our Your Pace student participation. So I don't have any concerns about the surplus that we've budgeted for this year. We look at this as a one-year process in that we go out to bid this fall, and we want to have ourselves in a position to begin construction after all the design is done immediately following commencement, so that we can do the work during the summer when it's not critical to have heat in the area, and so we can be ready for the fall of 25. So we are asking for approval of 1.5 million to replace the 2 boilers in Kelly Commons. Thank you, and I'm willing to take any of your questions.
Thank you, Betsy. Questions about this project? Not seeing anything for your presentation. Let me read the text of the proposed motion. Resolution that the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee approves the following resolution to be forwarded for Board of Trustee approval at the September 15 and 16, 2024 board meeting. That the Board of Trustees authorizes the University of Maine system acting through the University of Maine at Presque Isle to spend up to $1.5 million to replace 2 boilers in Kelly Commons. Is there such a motion? Trustee McMahon, so you have your hand up.
Just a question. It's in my book, page 31, item D, return on investment. It talks about 2 new high-efficiency propane boilers. It doesn't say, based on the current price of fuel oil and propane, what the return on investment is. Do we have an idea? Is this a 1-year project, a 5-year project? How long is it going to take to pay back?
We believe 5 years. That's using the numbers that we have right now for fuel and for fill of fuel and outcome. The changes in prices, however, I can only give you my estimate of 5 years.
Thank you. Okay, I believe I've read the text of the proposed resolution. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Moved by trustee Kane and seconded by
Second.
trustee Mishu. Thank you. Any questions or comments before we take a vote? Seeing none, Beth, could you please call the roll?
Yes, trustee Cates,
Yes.
trustee McCarthy,
Yes.
trustee Flood,
Yes.
trustee Micho,
Yes.
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. We're actually about 4 minutes ahead. Why don't we just take a 5-minute break? People get up and stretch and do whatever they need to do, and we'll come back like a 10:46 we'll start. How's that? So we'll be in recess. Thanks. Okay, we'll begin again if people pop back on. Great. So we'll continue on with the agenda. The next agenda item is a continuation of our system reserve policy and an update from our Vice Chancellor Lowe. Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you noted, this is part of a kind of a long series of conversations we've had with the board going back to last year around reserve policy and tweaks that the board has asked for, and we absolutely think are necessary. I think third of what will probably ultimately be a five-part conversation. So talk a little bit about where we are and where we're going to go from here. As I've mentioned before, I talked about it a lot at the last meeting, the current APL, the current reserve policy is, there's good stuff in there, but it's a mix of campus policy and system policy and a few aspirational policies that were put in there maybe 10 to 15 years ago. And it's just ripe for a rewrite. Even if we weren't having the conversation about tightening things up, it's ready for that. And so with Tracy's help and Darla and Miriam and others on our team, we've been diving into that and have started that process of pulling it apart. And it's not just taking out the language that's unnecessary or outdated, but it's also clarifying the policy that is system policy and then the policy that is specific. That is specific to campuses. And so we are in the process of pulling that apart. We would anticipate at your October 30 meeting, we'll present that language to you and hopefully get a little bit of feedback on that. We talk kind of again, drill down just a little bit into the details. As I mentioned previously, there are several buckets of reserves that you're going to see in the policy. There's the two that we typically focus on, the Budget Stabilization Fund and what we refer to as the kind of the systems operating reserves. But we also have risk management claims. We have a benefit pool carryover. We have capital reserves, and then variations on all of those, plus some at the campus level when you start breaking out E&G on one side and auxiliary on the other. So lots of different buckets out there. Our focus is on the system buckets, and it's specific to budget stabilization and the operating reserve. Our focus around the budget stabilization. So again, this is what we think about, what we often refer to as the rainy day fund. These are funds that are limited in nature for a very specific purpose. The way the policy is drafted now, that purpose it's gotten broader over the years. And so if you go back to 2008, 2010, when we created this policy, the intent of the budget stabilization was there to deal with a curtailment of allotment at the state level. So very specific piece of state statute where if the state is in these really unique budget circumstances where it needs to make mid-year budget reductions, as we had to do back in 2006, 2007, 2008 at the state level, this curtailment process steps in that allows the state to make mid-year budget adjustments. It's great for the state. It's not so fun if you're on the receiving end of it. For the university specifically, when this has happened in the past, we're in the middle of a year, so you can imagine we get into January, the state comes knocking at the door and says, we need $5 million reduction, which is what happened in 2011 or 2012, I believe. And we need a place to go. And it's not realistic in January for me to reach out to all the campuses and say, President Farini Mundy, your share is 2.5 million. And President Edmondson, your share is 1.25 million. And I'm going to need that by Friday. Just not realistic. And so we set up this budget stabilization with the sole purpose that that's where we would go in these type of emergencies. And because curtailments aren't a regular thing, just little mission creep stepped in. And so then it became, we went to the Budget Stabilization Fund when there were adverse economic conditions at the state, or our campus was going through a 1 or 2 year bump and needed some flexibility so they didn't make cuts, they could grow their way out of it. So what we're looking at is more returning back to what the original intent of the Budget Stabilization Fund was, to deal with those legislative curtailments. We're working on language that is flexible enough that if there was a substantial budget emergency that the trustees felt they needed to react to, that we felt like the chancellor, myself, that we needed to make a recommendation to you to act on, that we had that flexibility. But at the end of the day, it was this much more narrowed intent. We know from our recent conversations with the rating agencies that they appreciate the fact that we have a budget stabilization fund that has these limitations, not that different than the limitations that exist at the state level, that we're not going to go to it for the idea of the week. We've got reserve funds for things like that. This one is narrower and it's more specific. And so we're working on that language. We anticipate presenting that to you in October. The other type of reserve that we're focused in on is the operating reserve. That one is, again, much more flexible in nature. It kind of meets that sandbox definition that a few of the trustees have talked about. It's more flexible. It allows us to make timely and critical investments in between budget sessions. And then it also addresses those emergencies that might not be budget stabilization fund level, but things like legal settlements. We've had a couple of legal settlements this year. That is a place where we would go for the operating reserve. IT investments, a couple of times that we've paid cash for capital investments. That is where we're looking to narrow that language down. So again, our plan is to take a little bit longer than we thought just because of the complexity, and we've changed course a couple of directions, but we intend to present you with a new kind of draft of an APL that would focus in on the system side of things. We would anticipate once we got some consensus there, we'd start the conversation about the campus language and also update that. We think the October 30 date makes sense to share that with you because that is also the window when we will present you with FY25 budget adjustments after census. It's also the time frame that we anticipate talking to you about the FY25 through FY29 5-year, multi-year financial analysis. And so as we start having conversations about how we project the system will look over not just the current fiscal year, but the next 4 fiscal years after that, reserves are always part of that conversation. Feels like it might be a good time and a timely time to have that conversation on reserves. Then ultimately, based on your feedback, we would anticipate bringing it back to you at the following FFT meeting for approval, if that's where we are. So that's the update we were planning. I know we're right at about time, but happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chair, about where we are, about the direction that we're going, or any feedback that you have on that.
Apologize, I was on mute. Thank you, Ryan. Any questions? I'm not seeing any, so thanks very much. And we'll look forward to continuing that discussion next time around. Our next agenda item is IT project updates with Vice Chancellor Presido. And I've been in a number of meetings with Vice Chancellor Presido. I can't remember if you've been before this group since you've come back to us, Robert. Is this your first time with FFT?
I think this is my first FFT, but it's all a blur.
Well, I think it's your first as well. So welcome back in your new role.
Yeah, thank you, sir. It's good to see you all again, and look forward to the full board meeting where I'll go into much more detail on a couple of these projects. But I did want to give you an update. There is a full list in your packet, so I won't go one by one. And then after I'm done, your Chief Information Security Officer, John Forker, is going to provide you some insight into the CrowdStrike event. I know that's past us, but I think it's important that he reviews our response and you know that we're on top of those things. So as I said, I'll present a summary highlight of the most important initiatives. These projects, which range from enhancing our constituent engagement and student recruitment processes to modernizing our core administrative systems to align them with our broader goal of leveraging technology to optimize our operations and support our objectives, including unified accreditation and, most important project on our list, unified catalog, which you heard a little bit about this morning. As we review each initiative, I'll focus on the progress made, some challenges, and steps being taken to ensure the successful outcomes. So the first project I'll talk about is Advancement Ascend CRM. The University of Maine system awarded a contract to UC Innovation for their Ascend product to provide a comprehensive constituent engagement management solution for advancement. This project aims to enhance our capabilities of USM in designing, managing, executing online strategies for content management, email marketing, online giving, event management, membership management, and social networking integration. Ascend is a cloud-based solution running on top of Salesforce, offering a robust mobile functionality, automated logic-based communication tools, and extensive configuration and customization. It is designed to serve advancement of alumni association across the system. Currently, the project is about 75% complete. The efforts focused on data migration and environment configuration and testing. The timeline, I will say, has slipped a bit, but we're still looking early 2025 to go live there. Next project, and again, mentioned earlier, Raptor Transcript OCR solution, in an effort to enhance our automation of transcripts submitted by applicants for admissions or transfer. UMS has implemented this Raptor solution. It's an optical character recognition cloud-based system. Raptor reads college and high school transcripts. We're just doing the college transcripts right now, and integrates the extracted data into the student information system. This initiative is expected to significantly reduce application processing times and enable further automation and efficiencies with the student system. And we are actually went live some weeks ago, and we're still doing ongoing testing, monitoring, and improvements there. Point and click immunization portal. This project deployed a standardized immunization compliance module featuring a bi-directional interface with Maine's immunization registry. This project, which is in phase 2, has already achieved significant success. Go live phase 1, interacting with that state's registry. We've imported over 12,000 immunization records. The integration allows the point and click to automatically calculate immunization compliance for applications and incoming students, updating campus solutions with their compliance status. This automation has reduced the immunization validation time from 8 days to just 3 to 4 days, and is expected to further reduce it to 4 to 8 hours for most applicants and admitted students. The future phases will automate processes such as to-do lists and removal of holds based on compliance determinations, and ultimately making the sole record of authority and further streamlining the process for our applicants. Oracle HCM, that's our HR system. We did go live with phase 1. This is part of the full repaving Main Street initiative. The phase 1 is the recruitment, online recruitment, and core HR Lite modules. The project did successfully launch in July, just this past month. We have been attentive, and I really want to again thank the HR leads for Jason and Amy Parker, Jason Talbert and Amy Parker, putting in a ton of blood, sweat, and tears on that, and all of our campus level HR folks really yeoman's work there, particularly at the go live and in the adaptiveness. The solution really just brings us up to the 21st century. We said that a few times this morning, and it certainly meets the diverse needs of the University of Maine system, adapting to each campus. So this next project I'm just highlighting is, again, coming in just a few months ago. I expressed concerns with where we were with our complete ERP, which is HR finance implementation. And rather than me expressing the personal concerns I had with my initial assessment, I thought that we should bring in a third party that does this type of assessment and do a full pause and really take a step back to see where we are. So our partners in procurement helped me to engage and get a partner in here quickly. The beginning of August, we got Huron Consulting Group to come in. They hit the ground running. Been an amazing partner. They brought in the right higher ed experienced resources immediately, started meeting with our team, collecting and assessing. The assessment involved document reviews, interviews with project team members, a full evaluation of the Oracle Cloud, so our actual technical interfaces and the system. They logged in and looked around. And I'll talk a lot more about this at the upcoming full board meeting. Our engagement with Huron was pretty rushed, and they committed to getting us a full assessment before that meeting. I did meet with them last night, and they gave me a draft to give me sort of in a nutshell what they're seeing so far. The draft assessment paints a picture of a project that is facing considerable challenges, as I suspected. And again, I try to be independent, not offering my thoughts and concerns up front, so that you all as a board will hear from me, my concerns, but also from this independent third party. So several critical findings were identified. First, the project is significantly behind schedule. Most importantly, most functions in early design or development stages, and we really should be almost ready to go live. And I'll demonstrate that at the full board meeting. Key functionalities such as research administration, payroll costing are basically on hold, and meaning they're still in those beginning phases. There are many aspects of the complete design solution that were not really included in the scope of work, which would have left us in a bad way if we were to have gone live with the current approach. Particularly, one thing they've noted is that the implementation approach was using mostly a lift and shift, industry terminology to mean that we're moving our existing systems and processes to a new platform without making any major changes or improvements. And, you've probably all experienced this. We have functional areas with deep expertise in the way they know how to do things now. And there was not a lot of work done. And I'm not saying the functional folks, they spent a lot of time, effort, blood, sweat, tears. But there was not enough time and enough conversation about how do we do the processes in a new way that's more efficient, that might break the way we do it now. And that's really what we need to engage in over a longer period of time, is doing it better and perhaps differently to leverage what cloud brings for us, and not just trying to repeat what we've always done. Another point was that there was just an inadequate knowledge transfer and ownership of the system functions and designs between our partner and internal staff. So even the components that we have already gone live with, and my view and this assessment's view was not enough transfer of that ownership. So we don't have the expertise in-house that we should at this point, and we will definitely do as we move forward. Those will be key elements of any project that I personally sign off on. Another aspect is that the project end to end, all the people they met with was perceived as an IT-driven project, and we really need to have a culture shift and some conversations about that. This needs to be a community-driven project moving forward, so that there's much more engagement and from across the system, and I think people will receive that well. The folks who communicated that. Certainly, one point I've raised over and over that the assessment points out is resource constraints have stretched capacity of internal U.S. teams, impacting their ability to respond and be engaged in this. And, you know, that was something pointed out to us at the beginning of the implementation, that we really need to, when and if you all decide to re-engage with this, and I do believe we should, there's a necessity here that we get these functional departments the staffing they need, at least temporarily during this implementation phase, to really do this right. So despite all the challenges that I just laid out, there are some salvageable design elements. There was some bit of learning in terms of running the cloud and some integration pieces, the chart of accounts, preliminary integration designs, foundational decisions, and finance and HCM that can be leveraged. So we're not completely, you know, starting over, but you know, overall challenge to the project, and I'm glad we paused, and we will deliver a much more comprehensive plan to move forward, and I'll again share that with you in the September full board meeting. Overall, all the IT projects that I picked out here represent a significant effort to modernizing and streamlining the system. So while I'm ending sort of on a bad note, there are a lot of things in flight. We're really moving forward. I appreciate that you recognize that the things that you considered this morning are our desire to improve AI, our desire to improve the unified catalog, and all of those things that you're hearing, that we are attentive to the needs of the board and the chancellor. And certainly I am always going to be saluting sharply and understanding the direction that you want me to go in. So with that, I'll answer questions, but if there are no questions, I'll turn it over to John Forker for a brief update on CrowdStrike.
Thanks, Robert. Questions for Vice Chancellor Placido? Yes, Trustee McCarthy.
Yeah, thanks, Robert, for the thorough overview. And this is more strategically as you think about IT projects, maybe moving forward. I know large enterprise, we're doing a lot, and you got to like kind of build it out over time. Many of these projects often have like 3, 4, 2-year lives, but lots changes in that time frame. How do you think about like these giant waterfall projects versus like more agile, smaller bites as you think about going forward? Because I think, that's sort of how the world is evolving into smaller bite, more agile type projects.
Absolutely, 100%. We have to be more nimble to do things that matter quickly. We can't be in a 4-year traditional implementation project when you're basically the ROI for the product is 4 years. So you're going to be in an endless cycle of chasing your tail. So we are working internally to improve our processes and staffing alignment so that we can be faster at doing these things. But also recognizing that if we have a plan that is multi-year, that we can't wait on some things. We can't have enrollment strategy wait for 3 more years from now. So we have to have a mix of, we are doing some things right now, and I mean in 6 months or some fast deliverable, and then some things are longer in terms of we're really rebuilding a car and we want to have a solid running engine long term. So we have a longer term plan to keep really stable foundational operations, and then we're nimble and innovative in the meantime. So. But that means a lot of change, and that's something that you're going to see over the next few months. And so my first, I don't even know if it's been 90 days, has been all about assessing to understand where our weaknesses and strengths are. In the next 90 days, it's going to be aligning to make sure that we're meeting your objectives.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Not seeing any other questions at this point, so turn it over to John Forker. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, other committee members. As you recall, last month there was a Microsoft outage that affected 8.5 million computers worldwide, really hampered the airline industry, especially Delta, who took about a week to recover from it. And it was caused by misconfigured software called CrowdStrike Falcon, which is security software that's put on systems that we use within the university in what we call our high value targets. So it's a limited use, but it's, you know, we put it in servers and workstations that are in financial aid, for instance, or researchers doing HIPAA data or campus police. It acts much like anti-malware or antivirus software, you know, but it's got additional features to combat intrusions and allows us automatic notification if there's an issue that's going on a computer with that. So my security team can actually remotely access those machines, extract files if they need to. We can isolate the system from the network, but still allow us some access to get into those systems remotely. So we have 26 Windows servers and 258 endpoints that were impacted by this issue. The server administrators up early in the morning were able to recover their servers by 7:30 that morning. So it really didn't impact the workday. But the endpoints, it took much longer to recover, even though there was a quick fix issued by CrowdStrike that could be self-help, because our systems are encrypted and the people that, you know, that are the operators of those machines don't have the key to decrypt those. It took, you know, some of our technicians to help them one-on-one to work through it. So it took much of the day for the systems to get back up. It wasn't, you know, we don't consider it a textbook response, but the people did an amazing job, you know. So we did an after action to determine what worked and what didn't work. You know, communications being a big issue that we could have improved on. But, you know, a significant challenge, which is beyond our control, is, you know, the error that was made by CrowdStrike, which led us to, you know, reconsider, you know, whether CrowdStrike remains the best solution for our needs or not. You know, so we've considered questions, you know, such as, you know, is this problem unique to CrowdStrike? You know, how did CrowdStrike respond? You know, some factors on that I think are important. Endpoint detection and response systems are tightly integrated into Windows. So Windows has allowed them to reach down into the kernel, and so those systems really could have more devastating effect than others. But it's required because, you know, attackers, you know, hit down into the operating system level. The other thing is providers need to provide updates very, very quickly. So it's not like something that can go into days of sandbox testing. This is something that, you know, as 0-day threats come out, and there's vulnerabilities that are discovered that could be exploited. These security providers like CrowdStrike need to be able to provide, you know, those updates very rapidly. The type, you know, if you look into the type of error this was, it was one that you can really tell where they might not have been able to tell that this was going to happen. But that's not saying they shouldn't have. And so, you know, we're concerned about that. But would other security companies suffer that kind of problems, you know, the same way? You know, so what, you know, we look at the fact that CrowdStrike has suffered through this. They've done some things. They've corrected the root problem. They're undergoing audits on their quality control processes. And more importantly, you know, they came out with a process where they're staggering updates, so that it's not one update that's hitting everybody worldwide, you know, at 12 o'clock in the morning, but instead, you know, they're going to stagger it to their early adopter customers first, and then they'll be able to see whether that affects them, and then they can give the updates to the others. And we're not part of that early adopter group. You know, So at this point, we've evaluated, we don't see a need to abandon use of CrowdStrike immediately. In the long term, we're going to examine the cost effectiveness of the solutions. But I think more importantly, the biggest lesson that we learned is, how can IT be prepared for such outages, and our after action efforts are working through that. So I went through that pretty fast. Any questions that you might have on that or concerns?
Thank you, John. Questions? I'm not seeing any. Thank you for the update and appreciate it. Robert, anything else you have for us today?
No, sir, that's it.
Okay, thank you. So we'll look forward to seeing you in September at the board meeting. Thanks again. Our next agenda item is to talk about our upcoming work plan. Ryan's going to lead us through that, but we have listened carefully to members of the committee and others who have had suggestions for things we might be doing during our FFT meetings beyond the what I'll call the routine consideration and approval of projects and other things we have to do, but some more deep dives into other subjects and periodic check-ins on various things which are not necessarily time sensitive either. So Ryan, why don't you lead us through that discussion if you can? Those materials are the proposed work plan is at tab 9. There we go.
Yeah, so a copy of the work plan in front of you. As the chair said, we've been working, I think, over the last couple of years to try to fit in some of the topics that might be of interest that are just a little off the normal things that we do. So we'll always work to incorporate those into the agenda. You'll see several of them actually in today's agenda. The standing agenda is pretty consistent with the type of projects and agendas that you've seen in the past. Again, a heavy focus on capital projects, either the approval or the status report. That's a great thing. I've talked in the past. I can remember being here in 2015 in this same position and struggling to fill the agenda because we weren't doing capital projects, and so it was a lot of one-sided conversation. So it's great to be back in this position where we have to worry about how we fit things into the agenda. Again, in the ad hoc agenda, you see several of the items that we have, we typically do that we add throughout the year. A lot of them, no surprise, are focused heavily on the budget process. In the January timeframe, we'll kind of tee up the Sightlines annual report. It's a good lead-in into our budget discussions. March, April, and May, the committee will meet on budget. So if this is your first time through, it's a little different than some of the other committees in that, we typically ask you to meet a couple of times in March. We bring you in for a full day of budget meetings, but then we've got so much going on, we need to have a traditional meeting as well. A few years ago, at then FFT Chair Riley's suggestion and Chair Donnelly before that, we moved to what we call the new April meeting for the committee. So that's when you'll meet, almost 3 months in a row, mostly because we were presenting a budget to you in March. And then we were bringing you back at the very next meeting and asking you to vote on it and not having the opportunity for a long committee engagement. And so this gives you multiple opportunities, multiple bites at the budget apple, if you will. And then informational reports are always part of our committee, and you see where those are as well. The one piece that I would say is a little bit maybe up in the air is the multi-year financial analysis. So that is a 5-year report that we do. I referenced it earlier in my comments when we were talking about reserves. This year we made the decision to shift that back to the fall. We wanted to present it to you when we had the most up-to-date student enrollment information. So we've been in this position in the past where we present the budget to you in May. We might present the MYFA in July, and we were already starting to see either that enrollment report soften a little, or maybe it was a little bit better. And so information was already starting to be a little bit stale. And so last year we moved it to September. And then we ran into the issue of we were presenting it, and then the next month we were automatically then amending that budget. And so this year we're going to present the MYFA to you at the October meeting. We think that makes sense. And so we may reserve the right, based on your feedback in October, to shift this back as well, if it makes sense. But otherwise, it's pretty consistent with what we had last year and the changes that we've made over the last 3 or so years. And so I'll pause right there, Mr. Chair, and happy to answer any questions about the work plan.
Thank you. Questions? And again, as Ryan said, this is, I guess the budget stuff's pretty well locked in terms of schedule, but some of these other things we can be a little bit flexible. We can certainly add things as they may seem appropriate that are not on today's agenda, today's radar. But this is the general plan going forward, which we'd like feedback on. Trustee McCarthy.
Fully on board with the plan. I guess one question it raised for me was, I don't recall seeing the 5-year financial and the assumptions in the last July meeting, and was wondering if that was in process. And I know that's an important set of assumptions, Ryan, as you said, start to get out to campuses in November and January with those. And so I didn't know what the plan was to look through that.
It'll be at your October meeting. We'll present that one. We were going to present it in July, but again, we had the conversation that we thought it wasn't the right time, that it felt like it was going to be stale already. We were seeing, we did that budget last year, and then as you saw yesterday in the news, our enrollment numbers were already up, and so that caused us to think, maybe let's just wait and give you the most current information. So you'll see that at the next FFT meeting.
Great, thank you.
If I could, Mr. Chair, can I mention one piece I forgot, which was just, I forgot to mention the strategic plan, because that is the one item in here that is brand new. And so we will, at each of the FFT meetings as well, give you an update on half of the FFT items, deliverables that are part of the strategic plan. We're going to split those up. I'll do half of the half. I'll do a quarter of them at each meeting, and Gretchen will do the other ones that fall into the facility side. And then all the ones we didn't do at that meeting, we'll do at the next meeting. We'll keep that cycle up until you're sick of hearing about updates to the strategic plan. So that was the new piece I forgot to put.
Right. And that will be true rolling forward, not just this coming year. Thank you. Trustee McMahon.
Over the years, I've asked for some sort of feedback on completed projects. Did we meet our ROI goals on projects that we've done? It's not in the work plan again. I think somehow we have to close the loop. We authorize the expenditure of tens of millions of dollars, and oftentimes it's with a savings goal in front of us. We never see whether we actually achieve that savings goal. It would be good to have something like that in the work plan.
Yep, I'll talk with Gretchen. We've talked about that as well, and we've talked about the idea of shifting. We give you a capital report right now that is often stale, and I'm just going to note, I don't think a lot of people read it. And maybe we can reshift the focus of that and do a postmortem 6 months later or something along those lines. So I'll talk with Gretchen, and then I'll bring it back up with the chair and bring it back up for an update at the next meeting. So thank you for that suggestion.
Trustee McMahon, thank you for reminding us of that. You have raised it before, and we should address it. Thank you. Other questions for Ryan, or comments about the work plan, or suggestions about the work plan going forward? Again, this is not locked in. We don't need a vote. This is just the plan as of today. I'm not seeing any, so we can then move on. Thank you, Ryan. Next, at tab 10 on our agenda, the University of Maine Research Funding and AI Funds Overview presentation. And this is something which the board had asked for over the last few months. Just so much of what goes on in the world of research, particularly at the University of Maine, is not part of our annual budget, and so we don't necessarily see it all. And we ask that the university prepare for us more of a bird's eye view of all sources of money coming in, all sorts of expenditures going out, which may or may not be included in the budget. They prepared a really good a set of documents for us, which are in the packet. And President Farini Money is going to lead us through that overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Cates. We appreciated the opportunity to put this together in one place. There is a lot in your packet, and we won't cover every bit of it. So we're open to more questions and to further discussion. But this is about the research and all funds overview for the university. And Kelly will be joining me for this presentation. So just a bit of context in the next slide, please, Kelly. We are in the midst of a strategic re-envisioning initiative, and I share that simply as context. Reasons for that are that the world keeps changing, and we have many, many pressures. We also want to maintain our standing as a modern research university. And so we have a campus-wide, extensive, inclusive effort going on this. We can tell the board more about it, but a piece of this has to do with our research mission and a strong focus on how we integrate our research and our teaching missions together at the university. So next slide. In the presentation, we're simply going to do a high-level presentation of how research and development are funded, not just in our university, but in universities across the country, and then the all funds context for the university and its regional campus. So the first brief overview is about all funds, and Kelly will take us through this. You might be on mute, Kelly.
I couldn't find my my mute button there. I apologize. Good morning. Just an overall context, as we generally come to the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee, we discuss our Fund 00 or our E&G budget, and we discuss our auxiliary budget or our Fund 03. In addition to that, we have a number of other essential funding sources that come in through different fund types. So they come in through our cost share. Those are cost share that are distributed from E&G or come in from other sources to match our grants. We have designated funds. Those are often contracts or outside funds that are for specific designated purpose within the institution that may have a 1-year or a multi-year context associated with them. We have Fund 13, campus projects. Those are designated campus projects. We have our federal appropriations, and we'll talk more about the R1 land grant intersection, but we get a directed federal appropriation for our MAFIS, so our agriculture and forest experiment stations, as well as our cooperative extension enterprise. We match those with E&G dollars. There is a required 1-to-1 match. We slightly exceed that here at the University of Maine, but there is that is included in the Fund 22 side of that. We also have our directed state appropriations for Maine economic development through the MEIF appropriations, as well as an internal match that goes into that same fund. And then we have gifts, grants, and contracts. This is a large bucket containing all sorts of dedicated or restricted funds for very specific activities. I do want to call out that we are only talking in this context about annual operating expenditures. So this does not include any research activity or other activity as it relates to capital projects that may be outside of this. So you'll see a couple of different numbers as we go through the presentation today, discussing different methodologies for calculating research expenditures. Some include those capital expenditures. In this part of the discussion, it will just be about operating. So to summarize at the simplest level, you'll see this is what you often see. So you see the University of Maine as an approximately $328 million enterprise in our E&G and our auxiliary budgets. When I add our annual expenditures for all of our other fund types, this totals up to $476 million as our total annual operating budget.
To move to the research funding specifically, and again, a lot of detail in these slides, which I won't go through, and you've seen some of this before, but fundamental concept is that research universities are vital in the United States and around the world in producing new knowledge. So you see various definitions of research here. I like the NSF definition: creative and systemic work to increase knowledge of people, culture, and society. And the doing of research is a separate activity in universities. It is complementary, of course, to the teaching mission and to the engagement and service missions. And here you see a bit of detail about the Carnegie classifications, which have just changed. The two classifications they have for research universities are R1 and R2. I'll just add here that in a research university, such as the University of Maine, which is also a land grant, there are 5 different features that I'd like to mention that are somewhat unique and distinctive. One is that research is a requirement for faculty, which is the case widely. But in some cases here, it's 50% of their workload, and in some cases, it's 100% of their workload. We have an extensive compliance, accountability, and administration activity that's required when you have this much research going on. Doctoral students, as you can see here in the Carnegie classifications, become very important. And we estimate that a doctoral student's support is at about $70,000 a year when you add in facilities use and stipends and faculty time. As Kelly has mentioned, we have MAFIS, the Maine Agriculture and Forest Experiment Stations, as well as Cooperative Extension. There's a $6.4 million incoming contribution, and the match that we're required to make is that level as well. And then the equipment, facilities, and technologies that are particular to a research university. The next slide shows, I'll just skip it almost entirely, sort of where we sit regionally in the state of Maine as well as in New England. And you can see the categorizations. These are the Carnegie categorizations as they have been developed in that group. Next slide, please. Kelly mentioned that there are different ways that research expenditures and incoming research dollars are counted and reported, all of which have slightly different assumptions. And I'll turn to Kelly to describe a bit more of this. But at this point, I think to know that there is the data that comes from IPEDS, the data that is reported in the HERD survey to the federal government, and there are slight differences in these models.
Yeah, so as we go through the presentation today, we will describe what that total dollar amount for HERD is, which does include capital, and it does include, so when we look at IPEDS, the simplest way to look at it is we take a faculty and we allocate them to a department. So we say they are in the Department of Psychology. In the IPEDS number, 100% of their salary shows up as instruction because they're in the Department of Psychology. In reality, they may have a 50% appointment, as the president mentioned, that goes to research. So in the HERD calculation, they're pulling that time and effort out for our research faculty to be allocated to the research endeavor. So when we HERD again reported at the department level, or IPEDS reported at the department level, HERD is reporting the inclusive amount of the research activity that's happening on campus, the capital dollars that you're not seeing today, as well as pulling dollars out of departments because they're research intensive activity.
I'll introduce Cody Vararamian, our Vice President for Research and the Dean of the Graduate School, who I think has a couple of slides that he'll touch on quickly. Hi, Cody.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. All right, so as we can see from this slide, which is a page from our fiscal year 23 annual research report, the UMaine's total R&D expenditures for fiscal year 23 reached a total of $245.7 million. And by expenditures, we mean both funds from external sources that were expended for research as well as internal funds. And roughly speaking, of that $245.7 million, about 70% of that was from external funds. And as far as the total the external research funds that were received by the university during fiscal year 23, it reached a total of $189.7 million. Also, as shown there, over the last 5 years, we experienced around 98% increase in federal funding supporting research. And also, we talked about the HERD survey and HERD numbers, and those are also used for rankings. And so based on our research expenditures, by NSF HERD ranking, we are in the top 22% of the universities. And also, as you see on that slide at the bottom, there is a QR code. So if you wish to review our fiscal year 23 annual research report, you're surely welcome to do so. Should I do this slide, John?
Sure, of course, Cody.
Thank you. All right, so we can see research is more than our rankings, and it is about returning value to the state of Maine. And by statute, we are required to provide, and again, as shown there, programs of study, research, or experimentation that our citizens may require. And so this means that also that the Maine legislature continues to recognize this work through their state appropriations, including the Maine Economic Improvement Fund, or MEIF, which generates a return on investment of over $6 for every $1 that gets invested in the University of Maine system. Thank you.
So over the next few slides, I'm going to describe our use, going back to that overall $470 million bucket, how we're allocating and what of those dollars are allocated towards research. These are based on the IPEDS definition. So each of these categories that you're going to see today are IPEDS definition. So what we report federally as it relates back to the departmental number. So more than 85% of our overall FY24 research expenditures are coming from funds that are not E&G. So that means that we are funding it through our designated appropriations. The bulk of it are coming from grants. So external funding, federal, state, other grants associated with that. 70% of the research expenditures are in that category. However, what I do want to point out is that means that within a $470 million operating budget, we are spending about a quarter of our overall operating funds, including MEIF, on research. It's an expensive enterprise. Some of that is required match to MAFIS and cooperative extension, as the president mentioned, and some of that is an intentional allocation because it is a part of the overall mission and the expectation of our faculty and the research enterprise.
So here you see a different view of over time, the increases that Cody has mentioned, and the grants, the external grants, sometimes those are called externally sponsored funds. Those are coming from federal, state, and private sources in the form of grants and contracts. Very significant numbers, of course, from the federal government. And we're very grateful to our delegation, particularly Senator Collins with her leadership role in the Senate Appropriations Committee, along with Senator King and Representatives Pingree and Golden for their help in bringing in federally directed, congressionally directed spending for us. So you see some totals here. I wanted to take just a moment on indirect cost returns. So when grants are submitted to the federal government, there are two buckets of money that we request. One is the direct costs, the day-to-day work of doing the research, of paying the staff, of buying the equipment, of supporting the activity of the research. The other is called indirect costs, or F&A, facilities and administration. And that is to provide the institution with resources that help with this cost of research that Kelly and Cody have both mentioned. The current formula is that 47.7% of direct costs in any grant proposal that we write are requested as indirect costs. So in actual numbers, if you had a $100 grant, you would have $67.7 to spend on the actual direct work, and then the institution would get $32.3 for the indirect cost. And I think that's important. Those indirects, and we're very, very grateful to our faculty who are writing big grants, and therefore we're bringing in big indirects. Those are central in helping to support our E&G spending overall. So wanted to call that to people's attention. Back to you, Kelly.
So in our Fund 00, or within our E&G fund, we are spending approximately 6% of total funds on research. That includes that indirect cost return, that $20 million or just over $20 million number that the president just mentioned. This is primarily going to dedicated matching funds to support the Maine and Agricultural and Experiment Station Cooperative Extension, as well as a few of our research centers and institutes. Just to call it, the other research centers and institutes are funded either on grants or they're funded with the MEIF direct appropriation. Our auxiliary funds are not used for research. They are used for their intended purpose, going back into housing, dining, parking services, the specific programming for which those fees are paid. In our Fund 10 or our designated programs, most of this are considered public service based on the IPEDS definition. It is primarily the contracts and work that is coming in through the strategic partnerships or the Spire office that's led by Vice President Ward. In our Fund 12 and 22, this again is our our MAFIS and Cooperative Extension federal appropriation and our E&G required and incremental match. This is going entirely to fund those enterprise. Our fund,
go ahead. We're getting tight on time, just reminding.
Our fund, this is our campus projects. This is a combination of instruction and public service. I just want to call out, while this says instruction, it is because faculty time is always considered instruction in the IPEDS research unless they're 100% dedicated to a research center. So this misrepresents what is quite a bit of research productive activity happening in this bucket, and that instruction, it's a definitional piece with IPEDS.
We'll turn to Vice President Jake Ward just to be very brief on where we are with this. I thought I saw Jake. If not, I'll do this.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Nope. I'll just say very quickly that MEIF is a state appropriation that comes to the system. It benefits all of our campuses as well as Maine Maritime Academy. You see detail here. You also get an annual report on this. And these funds are critical to administering, excuse me, the R&D enterprise across the system. Next one.
And then just to summarize, as we mentioned at the very beginning, the bulk of the funding for the research enterprise is coming from grants and contracts, as well as, and then these other support you'll see are coming in primarily through restricted or gifts that are covering other activities within this bucket.
And so just in conclusion, then, I think we've hit the high points here. We are committed to being a modern and productive and first-class research university. And we are increasing our capacity thanks to support from Vice Chancellor Lowe to support R&D expansion system-wide. We will face the issue of the number of doctoral students that we educate. And so we are always looking for how we can use our funds well and expand our capacity. And with that, I think we're about where we need to be. I'll stop for questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that presentation and also these really great materials. This is exactly, I think, what the board was looking for, just to get some sort of overall sense of how the research enterprise, if you will, works at the university. This is terrific. Any questions from the board now, based on what you've seen? We could certainly digest these further going forward. Yes, Mr. McMahon.
Could I just ask?
Please, Trish. Well, you're mute for some reason.
That was fabulous. Thank you. I wonder, Joan, could you speak to just a minute? You know, we've heard all things about the need to upgrade the labs. On the chart that shows the indirects, which are clearly really important, very flat, while the revenues have gone up. I assume that's because of the source of revenues that don't necessarily include the indirect. So
Yes.
where's the gap? I mean, if you applied a standard of the indirect costs, if you will, against other funding sources, is there a gap in what you need to sort of keep up with the labs and do the kinds of things that indirects allow you to do?
Well, I'm going to start the answer and then turn it to Kelly. But I think there is, Trustee Riley, I think in part we address that because we have significant funds that we're investing in deferred maintenance. And so the research labs and facilities are built into that schedule as well. But they're one one piece of all of that. And a number of these awards coming in, particularly for capital, do not include substantial input costs. Kelly, is that roughly right?
That's correct. I'll just add that, so the $22 million that we receive in indirect cost returns, if I take the cost of the research and administration enterprise, specific research centers that we fund from E&G, as well as our graduate students that are essential, both their work and contribution to the research enterprise, as well as their calculation as a part of the Carnegie classification. The $20 million doesn't come anywhere near covering just those three things.
Right.
So there is a very small carve out of the indirect cost returns specifically to facilities renewal or equipment renewal. That's approximately $800,000 a year. So if I look at our total research gap or our total facilities and renewal need based on the Gordian study of approximately $30 million a year, and I'm spending about $6.9 million in funded depreciation, I'm still carrying about a $24 million gap that right now, based on the incredible work of the president in her VCRI role, as well as Vice President Ward, and the work across the system in securing congressionally directed spending, we are achieving that this year and will again next year, because we're able to pair those dollars and use them very strategically for deferred maintenance projects. However, on an ongoing basis, whether that's sustainable or not as a strategy to continue to improve our facilities. So as we work to strategically increase our dollars for funded depreciation, more than 50% of our facilities are research intensive locations. And we have not only the facilities, but the equipment is closely coming to what I would refer to as near end of useful life. So right now, what I say, does our operating budget sustain that for facilities and equipment renewal? No, it absolutely does not. And it's something we need to work institutionally at the University of Maine and with the support of the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee to move us in a direction that supports our facilities improvements.
Thank you.
We also do increasingly want to be sure that some portion of indirect cost is returned to the PIs and ultimately to the units that are helping to see those grants supported.
Yeah, great.
Thank you. Trustee McMahon.
Is there any income generated by this expenditure? I'm thinking of royalties, selling patents, licensing fees, and things like that.
I'll turn that to Vice President Ward. We are certainly set up well on the intellectual property side and tech transfer, and some of that is beginning to come to fruition.
Excuse me. Thank you, Joan, and thank you for the question. As Kelly indicated on one of the slides back, the designated Fund 10 is where we log the revenue that comes in through external activities, including the commercialization activity.
Thank you. Trustee Michaud.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A great presentation. Thank you very much. My question's on the on CDS funding. I know there's usually a delay. For instance, when the president signed the fiscal year 24 budget in December of 2023, some agencies still have, they haven't released the funds yet for the CDS grants or got a contract out. So my question is, because of the delay in agencies getting out that funding contracts, are you still moving forward with some of them? For instance, the HUD ones, I know probably all of them do. They have to go through the NEPA process. So are you starting that process now before you actually get a contract with the agency to be a step ahead of the game once the funds are released?
Thank you, Trustee. I'll turn it again to Jake. I know that these the funding agencies vary depending upon the project, of course, and we are in different places with all of them system-wide. We also know that the federal fiscal year still has another month to go, so we will start to see some of them land in the coming weeks, but Jake may be able to update on that.
Yeah, so I think, Trustee Michaud, that you've hit the nail right on the head. So when we look at these numbers on a fiscal year basis, we log them in the year the contract actually lands, not in the year that the federal award is approved in the federal budget. Many of the construction projects will include some of that, whether it's fully NEPA or other environmental assessment. we're fortunate in some of these projects that because we've already started them with other planning and design funds, that we're trying to be cognizant of having as many of the environmental issues, design engineering issues that can be funded on other sources done. Often those are submitted as part of that contract. So it varies. I'm just going to say it varies with project to project, but I think we've got a pretty good FM team that really works and tries to stay ahead of that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Trustee Michoud, I will just add though to that, we do not come to the Board of Trustees or to FFT and the Board of Trustees for approval on a capital project until we know that that grant is secured. So we may come forth, and I'll use the project that you saw earlier today, Sawick. We came forth in July prior to the issuance of that grant for design to move forward with what we felt was a level of risk that we could support on E&G if that contract would not be granted. And then we come to FFT once we know that we have secured those federal funding dollars, so that we wouldn't have to float or require to use E&G funds or reserves to cover a project that we would not be able to afford.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Trustee McCarthy.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the presentation. This was very clearly delivered on a complex topic. I mean, I see 100% growth rate in federal funding over 5 years, which is remarkable, right? Essentially doubling. And I hear the infrastructure challenges. I hear other things that I mentioned as challenges. Are there other areas of concern where you've outgrown your capacity? Because anytime you double anything, there's a lot of new complexities that pop in, is question one. And then question two is, I think a number of these grants may be multi-year, and you can see sort of how, like, what's coming into the future, right? Like, not that you need to have a crystal ball, but like, how are we thinking the next 5 years might stack up to the last 5 years? Those are my two questions.
The chancellor raises.
Yeah, Joan, I want to remind folks that in all probability, we're going to have to increase our research doctoral graduations by 30. That's a big challenge. And although it was mentioned, it might not have been fully explained at how expensive that's going to be if in fact we are going to retain 2 years from now, assuming we retain R1 now, just a couple of years down the road, the standard's going to be substantially higher, and we're going to have to come up with a plan, the system in cooperation with the University of Maine, if in fact that's the desire that people have. I have the desire to retain R1 status, but that is a big issue. And Joan and I talk about it quite frequently, and I think the board's going to have to become more involved in the near future.
Thanks, Chancellor. Chancellor raised the biggest issue, but the preservation of R1 is actually sort of code for what does it take to support and have a modern research university, which is the only public research university in the state. And so the production of doctoral students is deeply tied to external grant getting. It's deeply tied to the number of faculty on the campus and how many doctoral students they can advise and support in their own grants. And so Trustee McCarthy, several areas of concern that kind of spin out of that one. Is our faculty large enough and adequately balanced so that those who are capable of writing and expected to write external grant proposals have the time to be able to do that and to bring those in? We have an extraordinarily productive grant getting faculty, but many of them are sort of saturated. They've gotten as many as they can get and their time is used up. So that's a concern. I think related to this, we've already talked about the facilities concern. With that kind of growth, you grow the facilities, bringing in new faculty who need startup costs to be supported as they set up their labs. That's an area. And then the multi-year, and we've talked a lot about this locally, inside the campus, multi-year, we are so grateful for the congressionally directed spending awards that are coming in. And that is making an enormous difference, particularly in our capital footprint. At the same time, we need to keep the pressure on and keep expectations high for our faculty and students and staff to be successful with competitive grants. We need to grow NIH. We need to do better even with NSF. And so having that line of work is a little bit different than having the work that goes into the CDS, and we're working to grow both.
And if I might just add a summary in terms of numbers, as the president mentioned, at $70,000 per graduate student for 30 additional graduate students with an average time through the process of 5 years, that's $10.5 million. Just some fast math.
So did I hear correctly that our requirement for PhDs goes from 80 to 110, and that happens when?
So no, it stays at 70.
70, excuse me. Yep.
But to have 70 finish, we're kind of cutting it close. So our goal would be, knowing that there's attrition and that there is slow time to degree and so forth in PhDs. Our top end goal would be to be able to have 100 new PhD students every year.
And
give us the cushion, as well as, by the way, to give us help in instruction, to give us help in conducting the research that we're bringing in, and to offer great experiences for doctoral students coming from University of Maine. So that's a number that we've at least been talking about and what it would cost to support them.
Thank you. Other questions? Not seeing it. Again, thank you for a great presentation. Particularly the materials are excellent, and we'll have a chance to look at those as well. We have one more item left on the agenda. It's offsite location presentation for the University of Maine. This is an informational matter. It's now basically noon. I don't know that there's any time necessity to present this at this meeting. And unless people have an objection, I'm going to suggest that maybe we put that off and reschedule that, unless I hear objection, since it basically is noon. And so we'll do that. I assume that's okay, President Perini, Monday?
Yes, that's fine with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Since we do have 3 extra minutes left, it's always nice to end with some good news. And this is not part of our agenda today, but the papers are have articles in them today talking about the tremendous good news we have in enrollment. I don't see Jeff St. John still with us. I believe the chancellor is here, though. And if you could just take a couple of minutes, Chancellor, we didn't forewarn you about this, to talk about the good news in system enrollment.
Well, this is an overnight success that took 4 years to get to. It's a combination of things that we've learned, that we've changed our approach to. It's substantially increased our communications with potential students. We've talked, on the direct admit side, but we're also talking to students that we accept on a higher basis, and enticing them to choose us over other folks. The dollars we spent last year and this past year on going after in a much more aggressive way people who have some amount of credits but no degree. We've seen those numbers be enlarged very significantly. Transfers into our institutions are up mightily. It's a team effort. We have good people working out at the university level. I think we have good coordination amongst the universities and the system itself. But this is not a 1-year turnaround. This is a multi-year turnaround where we examined what we needed to change, and we changed it, including, by the way, dropping from 18 to 21 days after a traditional student's application is finished. That's how long it was taking us to let them know we were accepting them or we weren't accepting them. That time has been cut to a small fraction of the time that it took when I arrived here. Listen, I think the presidents are doing an unbelievable job. I think their staffs at their universities concerning financial aid and admissions are doing a fantastic job. And I think the system's getting a better statement out on these developments on a regular basis. But there's so many people who are a part of this. This is really a gigantic effort to get to where we've gotten this year, and really proud of everybody who has actively participated in this.
Thanks, Chancellor, and thanks to everybody who's on the screen who played a role in that, including obviously the staff, but also the campus presidents. Thank you very much, and we'll look now. Hopefully, all those people will be matriculating and showing up next week and whenever it is. So I believe we have now completed our agenda. President Free Money, thank you for your willingness to put off this last part. Just didn't want to have to rush through it because it's important. And having that, unless there's any other comments for the good of the order, I'll declare the meeting adjourned, and we'll see you all in September.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roger.
Thanks, Roger.